Hey, what do you want to wear tonight?
I don't know. What do you want to wear tonight?
Turtleneck and blazer, turtleneck and blazer, on point like a laser, in a turtleneck and blazer, turtleneck and blazer, turtleneck and blazer, on point like a laser, in a turtleneck and blazer. You wanna dress in a way that makes you feel sexy with a little sophistication. I've got something for you. Whether you're a college professor or a businesswoman in the 80s, men and ladies, grab a turtleneck and blazer. Turtleneck and blazer, style so much that my face hurts. In a turtleneck and blazer.
All right.
That was awesome.
Well, that definitely put a smile on my face, so it hurts. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Flow State, the show where we take all things Webflow, blazers, and turtlenecks seriously, as well as design, but not much else. As always, this banger of an episode is brought to you by your boys Hein and Matt, on point like a laser as always. We're excited to welcome our first ever guest to the show. Steve LaChance is here to talk to us about his new book, Marketing for Product-Led Growth, Become a Company Leader Through Credibility and Empathy. We'll talk to him about his background, where the idea of the book came from, learn a little bit more about what product-led marketing is and how we can apply this to websites and design. But before we jump into it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for future shows to make sure you never ever miss out on the most fun you could possibly ever have talking about design, Webflow, and no-code dev. So let's go ahead and start the show. First of all, welcome Steve to the show. The most important thing is we need to know your thoughts on that incredible cold open.
Incredible is certainly one of the words. Inspiring is another. Having seen it before, it gets funnier every time I've seen it. I was super pleased, and I feel like almost like I got lucky to show my wife that for the first time only like a couple weeks ago. It's been floating around on the internet for a bit. I was like, I had mentioned that we were on point like a laser, and she laughed. I said, like a turtleneck and blazer. And she looked at me like I was insane. And I was like, wait a second. I get to bring a piece of the internet to someone that they haven't shit yet. Let's do it.
I love that. It reminds me, that used to be like, that's how you found like your people, is by like an obscure quote from a movie. But now like it's even more obscure. Like you have to have been on that platform at that time, into that portion of the algorithm. So you could say on point like a laser to in like a room of 20 people. And I feel like that felt like pandemic era to me. That's what I was trying to think of. It's like, I feel like a lot of people saw that one.
And like the corollary, right? So we all remember when what passed for like meaningful conversation among friends was like you would just quote the same movie back and forth for several months.
Right.
For years, I mean, like all through college, I would, finish like the night, whether we were at the bar, or whether we were hanging out at the house, or whether we were just finishing off like a study session in the library or whatever. I would always like joke to, again, my wife, now at the time, the girlfriend, would say, all right, take me to bed or lose me forever, which was like a quote from Top Gun, like the original 80s Top Gun. And it turns out like none of my like classmates who were like in the study session that were like, even the ones in my age, didn't have any idea what I was talking about. Like, they just laughed because they thought it was funny. And I found out, like last year from my buddy Ben, he goes, I thought that was just something you always said. And I was like, no, man, I stole that from like a one-off scene from an obscure backup character in a movie from the 80s. So
that's the beauty of quoting something that's not popular, or like, or quoting something not popular from something extremely popular is also a great niche.
Yeah, that's my obscure one for that. It's always from the Count of Monte Cristo. Just obscure random line where he pretends to be dead, so they're dragging his body out, and the guy is like from dust to dust. He's like, ugh, I'm so bored. So I'll just say it every once in a while, and like Michelle will be like, what are you saying? I was like, oh, it's that thing from the Count a Month. It's like, it's just a whole explanation. She's like, I don't understand.
The explanation's like 5 times longer than the actual quote.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know if it's worth it, but it's always.
You're
worth
like
it.
Charlie from It's Always Sunny with like the strings on the wall and all that. It's like this is how it
Plotting it
connects.
Exactly. Well, the unfortunate thing is that neither one of us coordinated the turtleneck and blazer, so we're a little down on that, but we're still on point like a laser because we got our boy Steve here to talk to us about product-led marketing and his book. Before we jump into our first question for you, we want to show some love and some congrats on being ranked #1 in strategic management on Amazon. That's no small feat.
Thank you. Thank you.
We get to use some sound effects. So that's
That's right. I can't stop it though. Gotta just have the full applause.
Yeah. We'll cut the majority of that out, but still,
That was a live audience, man.
Yeah, we are stoked about that. So we kind of want to learn a little bit more about like what inspired you to write your book. So it's obviously the name in itself is very intriguing, and we want to get into more about that. But where did the idea for the book come from, and what do you hope people to take away from it?
Yeah. So first, start with takeaways, right? The primary takeaway from it would be that the target reader here, who is somebody who's in a marketing profession, who's being faced with the prospect of, or the desire to, or the forced march of product-led growth implementation, like in their company, and they're likely feeling a bit of anxiety around that. One, I was absolutely blown away when it came time to pick a title for this book that there's no other book out there just called Marketing for Product-Led Growth. I was flabbergasted that that was available. So I was like, okay, there's a dearth or a lack of resources out there. Not everybody wants to listen to a podcast. Not everybody wants to compile data from 50 million different websites. Nobody wants to take a course. And actually, I don't even think there is a course on it. But so the hope for them it would be to, discover the book and then come away from that book knowing firmly in their specific context, their company's needs, and in the space in their career that whether or not PLG is right for what they need to do, PLG is not right for every company. It's not right for every product. So that's the first one. If it is right, what are the current and next steps that they should take to like set that path forward in a successful way? And then the subtitle is really around like become a company leader through credibility and empathy. It's funny, you actually kind of have to work backwards to do that. By demonstrating empathy and exercising empathy, you can routinely build your credibility, and then through that you do become a natural leader. And that's across organizations. Marketing leaders in general are somewhere between, they often feel a lot of pressure on that their work isn't, I don't want to say not well received or not respected, but rather it's very difficult, as important as it is, though, to tie like marketing to revenue. And so it was really around, so what can you do? What should you do to elevate your own status and to elevate your own internal sense of worth and sense of, contribution so that you can feel and know and mark out that your marketing efforts for a product-led growth motion are paying dividends for the organization. Let me pause there for a second before I jump into why how it came about. But that's the goal. That's the takeaway I would hope, the transformation I would hope readers go through.
Yeah, I love that, and I suspect the next thing I'm going to ask has a lot to do with the end of your previous answer, but. Like the title obviously mentions product-led growth. For us in the design world, that we're all sort of tangentially on marketing. Like we're on the marketing sphere. We're always working with a marketing director or whoever it is on the website part. But can you take a step back a little bit and talk maybe about like what product-led marketing literally is and maybe how it's different from other traditional marketing approaches? Like you kind of like talked about how this title of this book didn't exist. And that makes me think like people aren't talking about it in a maybe informed way yet. Maybe because it's new, or maybe because, it's a buzzword which floats around in marketing, and then people never learn like the real guts of of what it is. So maybe get into that kind of, not defining every part of marketing because we'd be here all day, but maybe how it stands out or how it's a little bit different, kind of where you feel like it sits in that broader sense.
Yeah, so product-led growth, like as a concept, has existed kind of really like forever, but it was first coined, I think in like 2018, maybe 2016. I think it was Blake Bartlett that coined it, actually. I'm not 100% sure. I should know that because it is cited in the book. But
I think it was Abraham Lincoln, actually. I saw
he was up there. It was one of those few. The speeches were so good, people forgot to write them down.
I was going to say,
there just weren't notes. Yeah, exactly.
But so I would say the main difference between like a marketing for PLG or versus say a traditional product marketer or a demand marketer, or pick your favorite part of the pipeline marketer, would be the end goal, right? Too often what's called an MQL or a marketing qualified lead was like the primary goal of the marketing function. And it was, all right, take every human being on earth, force them through a linear pipeline, which is a terrible analogy, even though it's functional. What flows through pipes? Things you don't want to hang out with. But it was we'll identify strangers, we'll convince them to come to the website through any number of marketing activities. We'll capture some piece of value from them. Like they're going to give us an email address, and then we all know what happens after that. And the goal of product-led growth and marketing for product-led growth is actually to abandon that MQL end state and go right to deliver value up front. You can do it without ever having to bring someone even into the product. Marketing is the only one who can deliver value prior to getting them into the product. But then bringing the user, the individual, right to the value that they're going to experience from this product and get them into it from the get-go. So it's like skip all the lead stages and go right into, like, give them as many on-ramps as you can to fast-track them into experiencing the product so that they can love it and know it. But then really you're doing this without ever having the crutch or the wall to lean on that is traditional sales, right? So you have to have the entire conversation with someone without anybody ever being in the room. And quite frankly, no one on earth has been doing that longer than marketers, right? We're very good at having a conversation with human beings when we're not even in the room with them. And so that's kind of some of the provenance around the title and the difference, I would say, between the two. There's like specific other metrics that are in the book that you can either Google or check out if you want, but that's the punchline of it.
Yeah, you can keep it at the tell me like I'm 5 for the designers in the audience, which is just me and Hein, really.
The interaction though between all members of the organization, right? So instead of marketing working with design to drive a decision or an action on a website, and then handing that off to another team, to a sales rep, now they're in the pipe, now they're a product user, now they're a client, now customer success. Like you get all that out of the way, and it's every human being is working together because you need to design the right pre-product experience for them. It needs to be a valuable one. It can't just be fun. It needs to be a valuable one, especially in the B2B space. Same thing is true like within the product itself. And if we're not all working together on a same coherent message, the user, as they go through their self-service, which is really what we're talking about here, that self-service, they're going to have jarring experiences between different phases unless you're working together. And just because a website's fun doesn't mean it's useful or valuable. Just because a website looks pretty doesn't mean the product itself actually solves a problem. So you need that cohesion across the different groups. Yeah, groups. I'm going to say groups.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess like Matt said, explain it to me like I'm 5. So I think from a conceptual standpoint, I understand like what you're saying. I think contextually, like would product-led marketing, would this fall into product-led marketing, like something like getting them in like as a free trial right away into the.
So there's a level of groups to get to that, right? So there's a level of steps, I should say, you need to take to get to that sort of the freebie, whether it's a free trial or a freemium or some loop. So, hey, you get all the features, but once the time runs out, you get downgraded to fewer features. You could still use it, that kind of thing. that's all options. And unfortunately, a lot of companies think all I have to do is give out like a free trial and put a self-service mechanism on you can just sign up and now boom, we're PLG. It's like, no, not even close, but you do need those two things. So I would think about this as sort of like, what are the different on-ramps to the road of value that you're creating for these people over time? The longest chunk of your relationship with your customers is going to be once they're already customers, ideally. Like they're going to be with you for far longer than they took the decision to become a customer to begin with. And so marketing for PLG is all about producing as many on-ramps as possible. I'll give you 4 key ones right now. One would be, I'm 83% of human beings, I'm researching a problem and the different solutions that are out there. As a marketer, as what's got a great website, a great digital presence in general, because that's where everybody goes to find info, has to be solving and answering the questions that people are looking for solutions to. Hey, I'm Googling a problem, I'm reading and interacting with some content. This gives me an opportunity to learn more and move on. Further down the road, so that's one. Like they're just doing some research. 2 would be, I found the free trial, right? Okay, cool. I clicked on it. I give it a go. I have a beautiful onboarding experience that takes, a few clicks, very little information, value right up front, blah, blah, blah. That's another one to get into the product, right? Another shortcut, though, jumping ahead of that, would be an invite from someone who's already in the product. Hey, Steve's using this. He loves it. I need to show someone about it. Canva's really good at it. Think about Zoom. If you ever invite anybody to a Zoom, I hate using that example because they mostly got lucky that everybody had to work from home. And that's why they got big. But there's examples like that abound. And then the fourth one would be like an output share. So not even necessarily bringing in a new user into the product, but rather your product produces a solution that is likely more valuable if it's shared with other people. Could be a reporting feature, could be anything. And so if I just click share or I send that with someone organically and meaningfully, you don't want to like engineer kind of trash experiences. But if your product really does do that, those are 4 ways to get people to know the value your product creates. And in each step, each of those, you give people an opportunity to continue to use it or to come in and try it for themselves for the first time. Think about like it's everybody's favorite thing to talk about this year, Chat GPT and online, right? Oh, look what I created. How funny is that? How cool is that? Everybody saw it. Oh, I'll give it a shot. Oh, all I have to do is just type in a question. Anybody can do that, Whether or not you get real value out of it's an entirely different system. But that's sort of the generality behind it, right? So instead of forcing you through like a weird linear process that's very dehumanizing, people get to discover at their own pace. They self-educate along the way. They give it a go. They come into the product knowing what they're going to get out of it because marketing set expectations for them. Product over-delivers. Everybody's happy. Unless you screw it up or do it terribly, which most people do.
Cool.
We've never screwed up anything before, so I'm not really familiar with the concept, but I appreciate you for bringing it up.
Us mere mortals, let me tell you, we do it a lot.
We just go all the way on the ego on this show, just assume everything we've created, even the first try, was great, and it's just greater every time.
I wouldn't even call it a try. It was just, it's done.
I mean, we try to use words that people can relate to, so, try, things like that.
Yeah, as you talk about it, it definitely makes me think about, especially from a product standpoint, like one of the things that you mentioned was like the onboarding thing and how, like, you said that, if you just drop a free trial or freemium version, it seems like you're doing product-led marketing. But I realized that like a lot of these onboarding is always ask like, what kind of role are you? How many employees do you have? They ask that, but it doesn't seem like it goes anywhere, right? So just very much it's like they're just asking that question, but then it never turns around to be like, oh, like Hein put in these things and clearly just saying like this challenge or this desire or whatever. So then there's no like an email drip follow-up or anything that's like content of like, hey, we see that you signed up. Awesome. Here is an ebook or something like that, particularly around like this problem, this thing you're talking about. Like, oh, this is really cool. They like seemed like they really, it wasn't just some generic like sales funnel that they're just asking these questions like that don't go anywhere.
My favorite, and because people screw it up all the time. They're not maliciously screwing it up, but like little things. Like, oh, you did click free trial. Cool. All right. Like, you get the welcome email like in the first 30 seconds while you're still exploring the product. Like, the experience you've given someone is to pull them out of your product so they can read your welcome email, which clearly isn't personalized, because how could you know anything about them yet, other than what they might have decided to tell you, that kind of thing. But I digress from where we were going there. The multitude of ways people kind of wrong foot the process or the implementation is legion. So
Yeah. I think that gets into our next question really well, because I think once you get it wrong, then like you lose a lot of that credibility that you were just kind of talking about. So we really wanted to kind of get into that next, which was like the idea. Obviously, credibility and empathy are important since they make it to the book and the title of the book. But just wanted to ask you in terms of like how do these elements play a role in achieving product-led growth?
yeah, so empathy is like a fundamental human characteristic, and I would challenge anybody who looks down on that. The idea of empathy being a good thing to do some real self-reflection and fix your life because there's something wrong with you. But like empathy in this particular case is really around being able to understand the needs, the wants, and the problems of others so that in this particular case, from a business forward case, you can anticipate what their needs are. Because in a product-led motion, certainly in any real marketing motion, you need to be able to speak to human beings about the things they care about. And demographic data typically doesn't get you there. Even sort of the practice of psychographic data is, interesting and applicable in many cases, but a lot of ways you need to be just sort of solving the problems for other people ahead of time. The reason that empathy matters is you get to present solutions to individuals before they've asked you of it. And it's not the craziest stuff in the world. It's like, oh, we wrote this ebook, we wrote this content piece, we've ungated it because we respect you and know that you're smart enough to use a burner email or an ad blocker or whatever, or both. And we created it ahead of time because we knew you needed it, and we know you needed it because we've done this for a while. And so being able to repeatably, reliably, regularly, alliteration, solve a problem for somebody or exceed their expectation on it lets them know, like, all right, these guys know what they're doing. People try to shortcut that with like on websites, right? Social proof. Look, these other smart big name logos trust us. You can trust us too. And it's worked for humans forever. So yeah, in a lot of ways that's true. You can do that. But yeah, so it's really around, being able to empathize with the needs of these particular users in this particular instance. It's not necessarily like, go live their life for 10 years and then you've got it, but really reach out, have conversations. From that empathy, be able to see the future, build up credibility. And this is true internally for your company as well. I should put it that way. If you want to be a company leader, especially as a marketer, you need to be able to empathize with what the company's needs are. Sometimes it's as easy as asking. Sometimes you ask and your boss will say something like, we need more revenue. It's like, okay, I understand that, but figuring out how you can answer the question for them when they go talk to their board around what marketing is doing to drive revenue, how it's a leading indicator, or how this effort, tied to that. And often the argument, or not the argument, but often your instinct is to go right to this campaign drove this many MQLs, drove this many dollars. And it's like, that's not really what we're going for here. We're looking for things like, how many folks came to the website? Sure, because that's the main entry point, a PLG motion. But how many folks clicked on free trial? Why? Of the free trial, how many stuck around long enough to experience the value for the very first time? Ideally, it was in the first couple of minutes. Of those, how many came back next week? Of those, how many are still here? Now, how much revenue have those delighted users also driven by inviting friends, spending more, that kind of stuff? They take time, but by empathizing with the risks your management is taking and the investment that they're making and their need to see an ROI on that, signals to your management team that you're a credible business leader and you think about things the way owners do. You're not managing a process, you're owning an outcome. And that's critical if you want to be seen as a leader in your organization.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was just gonna say that like yes, everything that you're saying like relates. So like I speaking for myself, like I relate to it so much, and I think from being in the digital world that we live in now, like it's so easy to try out new products all the time, and it's even it's just as easy to launch new products all the time. And I can speak for myself, and I'm sure the both of you have as well, where you see a product, it's market, the copy is great. It's basically saying it's gonna solve this problem for you, and then you use it, and you're like, this was definitely made by someone who has no idea what I have to go through to do this thing. Like it was just kind of an opportunity thing of like, hey, no one's doing this, let's go do it. And so, I think immediately like that sense of credibility and empathy is kind of lost, and now you're seeing more and more people doing things like, we're making a creative solution for creatives by creatives, just letting people know like we actually have lived this, we've done this, we understand your challenges, and we're here to like solve them because they're problems for us too. And I don't know, that gets for myself, like those types of products, I'm a little bit more interested in trying them, knowing that like, okay, this person at least kind of at least to some degree knows what I'm going through. And that's just such a huge like selling point.
100%. 100%. Sorry, Matt.
No, I was just gonna say like back to just the word empathy itself, like versus marketing. Like it's just not a word you hear in a lot of marketing meetings. So it's almost like reframes the entire discussion, just like putting those two words together. At least for me, so often like marketing feels tactical, and like empathy we're kind of talking about like how to use it in a strategic way, but it's hard to make it purely tactical. Like it just requires human understanding, thought, those things that are harder to compute. It's just kind of striking how far that is from the dashboard, that we tend to look at for marketing. Not that those aren't valuable, but it's easy to see how just taking that angle, it's probably just a part that doesn't exist in a lot of marketing rooms, of any kind, no matter what your strategy is. So anyway, I was just thinking about that as you talked through the empathetic part of it. Is it's just sort of like, this is a word that belongs everywhere, like you said, but almost like especially here, just to remind ourselves that we're talking to people, not a digital page or whatever.
Right, we're helping somebody solve a problem because they are also trying to solve a bigger problem, likely. And every new customer that you find, every marketer is trying to present the solution that they genuinely believe the world is better off for having to other people that are actively researching solutions. Those people are researching solutions from a position of disappointment with their current solution. Their solution might be a competitor of yours. Their solution might be they're doing nothing and they've just realized that it's a problem. Their solution, and they're doing that while using your product too. So like, even while they're using your product, they're in that flywheel of research. Like I'm also trying to find and test out other solutions, so that if there's a better way to get it done, they're going to take that. And a lot of the disconnect is who hears from current users' needs or missteps or misalignments with promises that were made. Typically customer success. And if you think about like the pipeline that so many people deal with, or the funnel, which is a terrible analogy, by the way, because everything that goes into a funnel comes out the bottom, and that's just not how sales and marketing work. Like
you just wait. That's the way I've understood it. You just put it in the funnel and just sit there.
It's perfect. Gravity does it for you, Matt.
That's
it's so
right.
easy. So, but like the what you need to know is like at the other end with customer success. And some companies like, well, we put together, we have customer advisory boards. We have those conversations take place. It's like, well, you're just communicating like customers' needs to marketing, who then or they usually just take it to the engineers, and then you just, guys, I'm a people person. Why can't you people understand that? I talk to the customers to tell the engineers what they need. Like, that's not really we were making fun of it in Office Space that many years ago. We know that system doesn't work, but people try it anyway. Whereas marketers can get ahead of it, usually by getting out of the room and talking to human beings about what they do and what they're trying to get done and what hasn't worked. So,
Another concept, I'm just unfamiliar with getting in an actual room and talking to people. That's
To
wild.
your tactical comment though, nobody has a job where they've just got free time. Like we're all very busy people, and when you do get a little free time, you let your brain rest, and you should. But if you could work it into your daily flow or your weekly flow, I'm going to talk to one customer. I'm going to talk to one prospect. I'm going to call someone who fell off the map and figure out why. Could be as simple as they found a better solution. Could be as complicated as they didn't understand what you were trying to tell them. Marketing can solve those problems. So.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the marketing portion of this for obvious reasons, but wanted to hit a little bit too on this like pathway to leadership. To like you talked about, you mentioned how this also helps internally, like following this kind of approach. And a lot of people want a pathway to whatever leadership looks like in their career. So I thought, let's not like bury that in the marketing discussion here. Maybe you could expand a little bit on that leadership aspect of this and how your book addresses that and, maybe what people can kind of look forward to digging into on that front.
Yeah. The first thing to do, I would say, is ask yourself why leadership, or climbing a more. If your goal is to climb an org chart, there's tactical ways to do it, and you can do it without empathy. And quite frankly, typically the folks you find at the very tippy top of an org chart got there by actively abandoning some more empathetic and credible and integrity-based decisions. That said, if you want to lead because you feel that everyone alongside you will be better off with your contribution as a leader, then you're in pretty good shape, right? And the path forward, I think, for a lot of folks is, what does a leader do, right? A leader helps identify outcomes that take more than a single individual's efforts to do. Recognizes the skills, the talents, and the resources and the diverse set of opinions and backgrounds and knowledge bases amongst a group of folks. If you're in a company, congratulations, they're in different departments. Sales, product, customer success, yourself, etc. And you can identify, we're looking for an outcome here that takes more than just what I can do. And then you reach out and you work with those folks and you figure out what they're working for. What are their goals? How is what you're going to do together help them achieve their goals? And if you can do that the same way you're doing it for your customers, how working together are we going to get you further along your path than if you were to have to do this alone, or I have to do it alone? And then the leadership component comes from the fact that you are, by the exercise of going through that, learning what people are trying to get done, figuring out what problems they have in their own, processes or whatever, or day to day, or, maybe their goals are entirely misaligned with anything that they've been tasked to do. You can help those people find out why they want to be a leader or why you want to be a leader, and then just go do it. I get a lot of conversations from folks who are looking for, that path. They want to work towards something, and they mark that towards something as like a job title. And it's like, well, okay, that's, if you're looking for boxes to check to get there, someone's willing to sell them to you, but you're not going to be happy really until you figure out what it is you want to do. Some of the best leaders I've ever worked with got to that senior individual contributor level, never took on an official team manager role, and we're just the happiest clams you ever met. And also the people I still go back to and talk to, and I'm like, what do you think about this? What would you do in this situation? So leadership takes on a whole bunch of different roles, different forms, I should say. But the outcome is always people who can get more done, feel better about themselves, deliver better outcomes to the people that your group cares about, because they look to you to help manage resources. I've been a CMO, right? I am a CMO for a startup right now. The job is mostly figuring out what needs to get done and then getting resources together to do it, and then just getting the fuck out of the way.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Right?
Just let it.
I've done my bit.
Go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
yeah.
keeping everybody else out of their way too. When you've got a CEO who's like, "Oh, what's this, that, and the other thing?" It's like, "Don't, Rob, let me worry about that."
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I'm here.
Leave.
I have the M part. You have the E part. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Hopefully that was helpful. It was like 3
No,
minute
it was.
No.
It's like we never think about it certainly from this standpoint, but you know, Hai and I have talked about like since day one, we're always like when we get any sort of project, it's like we need to get them wins. Like that's really like the broadest sense of what we're doing. Yes, we're making them a website and all these things, but all these other parts that we've talked about as you broke down these pieces and parts of marketing, some that we should care more about, some that we probably should care less about. But at the end of the day, it's like that person, if it's a large enough company, especially, and like they're the marketing director or the VP of marketing or whatever, it's like we view it as best we can. Is like it's our job to get them the wins that are important to them. Like it's their job to tell us what those are within the confines of their business. But once we know that and have that understanding together, like we're gonna push through this project with them in mind. Like they're our person, we're their teammate, and yes, we're gonna leave at the end of the project, but it's almost the best metric for us is like sometimes later down the road, you know, like you don't see that success, we sort of exit the project, you know, and then all the marketing begins and all the measurement begins and all the like actual 12 months of trying to achieve those goals. It doesn't usually happen on like launch day unless it's a product launch or something. But anyways, interesting to hear that. You know, we probably stole that idea from somewhere else once upon a time, but we're just like
Abraham Lincoln.
yeah, for sure. It's DiCaprio maybe on that one, but
A couple of
yeah,
sharp cats, man.
those guys
Both
said
those two.
everything.
Nice.
I think they just talk all day long, and they're just like, eventually, you know, like eventually something's gonna be gold. But anyway, like that came up too. Is just like I don't think either of us thought about it this way, but it's like keeping these projects as human as possible. I don't think we would have labeled it empathy necessarily. Where it's just like we just want to be like working with a human in mind, because we're just looking at code or we're just looking at Figma, and sometimes that feels really far away, even farther away than marketing. Sometimes we're like the thing before the thing before the thing.
Well, it's like, you know, we built every machine to solve a human problem. Some machines were built to solve machine problems, but that's only because there's, you know, that second order machine problem is still trying to solve a human problem. Like it all comes down to like we're meeting a need that somebody has, and I could absolutely empathize with the act of I'm inside a particular program and I'm trying to work within the constraints of that program to deliver a specific output that somebody's told me. Whether you're the marketer who's just wrangling with HubSpot to get it to say the things you need it to say, because that whatever it is, that output answers a question for someone or informs a decision for someone, or in your case, like this really, we want it to look and feel beautiful. I mean, how often are you talking with a client, right? And they're describing to you emotions and feelings, and now you're like, now I need to do this with palettes and fonts and shape and good design, and I'm pretending like I know what you guys do, so sorry about that. But like, you know, like it's, you know,
That's basically it.
the most productive conversations don't ever discuss the width of the padding you're going to have on like a particular, it's just not how people do stuff. So don't write those papers.
Yeah, this conversation has been really great because it just further always being reminded of that importance of empathy and credibility and everything. Because I think so much of what we try to do, and we always kind of say, is that we want the design to be very functional. Because if it's not solving problems, then it's just art at the end of the day, and that's not what we're here to do, is to make art pieces. And and I think we also like just focus so much on like just teasing out like how is this website going to serve the needs of your people, your customers, because that's what it is at the end of the day, to always kind of like drive it back to that, because that's ultimately like why you should be getting a new website, right? Because it needs to be serving the needs of your customers, because then that then serves your needs. So it's just kind of so it's such an important thing.
I like the function comment you made there. But I think about, and it was probably 9 years ago now, guy I worked for said, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. And I thought that was just the dumbest shit I ever heard in my life, because I was like, imagine if you ordered a steak and a pot of boiling water sizzling came out, and it was like, here's your sizzle. And it's like, no man, like, you know, like, that's not what I ordered. Or
get
if
the
you,
steak, it's like literally just the sound.
it's just like somebody's got that steaming platter
Yeah,
of
that's
fajitas and they
fajita.
threw water on it, and it's like, if, or even at a simpler level, at a more concrete level, if you order a meal and all that comes out is a plate full of like very beautiful garnishes, this does not solve the problem that I came into this restaurant to solve. So, but I use a lot of food analogies because
We do too.
we all eat food.
It's
We all
getting
eat
near
food.
lunch as well, so we're gonna have to speed through this final.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's unfair to kind of like move on to the nugs portion of the conversation because everything you've been talking about have been all pure nugs of wisdom, on point. Like
Too much wisdom,
Yeah,
I think already.
yeah, just too much. I think if I had a turtleneck, my neck would be uncomfortable because of all the wisdom that you're filling me up with. But we'll move on to some nugs right now. We got a couple of questions to ask you for some nugs. So, as you already know, we are website guys. We make websites for a living. So we have to ask, what are ways that people can use their websites to implement product-led marketing strategies?
Yeah. So, depending on which avenue you bring folks to your website, right? So if you've constructed some content and you're winning on an SEO, or if you're winning on a search, or if you're winning on an ad, whatever it is, just be mindful of whatever brought someone to your website has already set up an expectation for them. If I click on a link because I did a certain term, I expect to see the answer to my question on that very first page. I would say one of the biggest things you can do is to avoid the temptation of using your homepage to close a deal. That's not how people, I mean, especially if you're in, say, the B2B space, or if there's a purchase that's over a certain threshold, let's call it $100. I made that number up. But like, if somebody needs to think about or budget for this purchase, you're also not going to make that deal on the very first visit. And so you need to be using your website to construct a meaningful experience for your visitors, where they are, again, researching solutions. They're trying to figure out how you stand against the competition, the placement part of the 4 Ps in marketing. They're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be risking their professional or personal reputation by suggesting you. So you need to be thinking about the website as like this step within their personalized and self-controlled discovery and research journey. And you get to be sort of like that helpful guide for the little piece of it. Like, you're not going to be there for the whole trip. Star Wars analogy incoming. Yoda wasn't even in the first movie. You know what I mean? Like, he was the guide for that very specific portion of that journey, so that the hero who is your visitor can get to the destination they want to be and need to be in. Not the one you want them in, although hopefully those goals do align. But yeah, I would say that. Just don't over-rely on your homepage. And no matter what expectation you set with the signage you use to get them to come to your website, deliver on that as soon as they get to whatever that click they make is. Don't make them hunt for it.
Yeah, those are really great points. And I really love the point that you made about like getting them to where they want to go, not necessarily where you want them to go. And I think that just, again, ties it all kind of back.
Yeah, the gap between those two things is much wider, I think, than we realize, especially as business owners, even, right? Like, thinking of ourselves, right? We're like, wouldn't it be great, though, if we did book a deal on the homepage, Steve?
Wouldn't it be awesome?
Wouldn't that be
It
great?
would just be the best thing ever. You might even get a high five out of that. But like, So the other thing, too, is someone's like, oh, I really want this piece of information. And then you bring them to that piece of information. But then you say, let me get that email first. Like, you've gated that content is just a trash move. That's not a product-led strategy. That is very much a marketing-led strategy, which is fine, but that's not a product-led strategy. And you're not gonna make any friends by forcing them to give you value, a piece of information on how to contact them before you give them the value they're looking for. Like, what if you had to fill out a card with your contact information before they gave you like the little sample at the end of the aisle in Costco? You'd be like, no, I'm not taking your I would also say don't over rely on the freebie, because There's a whole generation of iPhone users who got a free U2 album, and they never asked for it, and they were pissed. They were
And they
mad it
hate
was
it.
there,
Yeah.
right? So, like, just because it's free doesn't mean people want it.
Yeah, we definitely have had this
Yeah.
conversation, me and Matt, how much we've despised all
okay.
that. So,
For sure.
especially when you got into your car and immediately started playing, and you're like, how do I stop this?
I always feel like too, like even the email collection thing, like when it happens in a jarring way where it's like not quite logical to wherever you're at in the process, it feels a little bit like I know where your family lives. Like it's almost, it feels like, it's like I know where you live now. It's like the part in the movie where they take the driver's license out. It's like, no escaping me now. You're gonna forget you signed up for this, but I know where you are. So yeah, it's jarring in that way. I think there's a right time to ask for that, but not the old bait and switch.
We can get into the details of when to collect data on the path another time.
We're gonna have to have you back for sure. I think a lot of people will get a ton of value out of it. And this is a great way for designers to, like, design is ultimately about doing all these things well. So there's a lot more to it, again, like you said, than it looking great. And a lot of it is buried in what we're hitting on right now is how can we as designers aid these things and be thinking about these things and passing these ideas along to people who don't have this mindset or don't have a huge marketing department. Like, we can help them really punch above their weight. And ultimately that's value that designers can deliver, hopefully, or at least get them connected to these thought processes and then read your book if they want to DIY it or call you at 1 a.m. Yeah. I mean, we make the biggest logos, shameless plug, like coldest beer in town styles. Like you can't even get a larger logo than what we'll give to you.
Well, I was going to say, to connect with what you were just saying, like how all of this connects to us as designers, is we can always kind of refer back to Dieter Rohm's like 10 principles of good design, and it's literally number 2 in there is good design is making a product useful, and then so that's
Number 1's logo.
Yeah, if you have a larger logo, it's obviously number 1. But
yeah.
It's like right up there.
It's minimalist, right? It doesn't even have transition words. It's just logo huge. That's it.
So Matt, do you have a Nugs question for?
Yeah, I think this is another thing that we could maybe even have you back for a whole episode on. But, we're a service-based business, but we productize services a lot of the times. And just thinking about some of the things you said and how we could, as a service business, even like implement some of these principles, like if you have any off the top of your head. But I think this is a huge topic, and it's really, really fascinating to think about, like, if we're the product mostly, how might we implement this? Is there a way for us to kind of tap into some of these principles?
I think certainly, because I define for like a successful product, like product-led growth motion, it's about like 6 things you need to worry about. First is the product market fit. Are there human beings with a problem, where there are more of them tomorrow than there are today, where their needs are articulated, where you can do something better than any competition out there, right? And for what you guys do specifically, or any designer for that matter, folks who need design services are very aware that they lack the technical and the creative skill set necessary to create beautiful things, especially in very complicated and dynamic. Something as dynamic as a website, right? It's ubiquitous, it's dynamic, it's difficult. But the folks who are coming to that know that they need that help. Do you also want to look for like a growing population? But we won't go through all these steps. The punchline here is, if you're delivering a service, what you're still delivering is an outcome, right? I'm going to conspicuously experience value by having engaged with you guys. And if you're a designer, it could be as complicated as, or as easy as, depending on your favorite approach, like a true logo design. Like, we need to create a face and an identity for an organization or a brand. Like, what someone who's purchasing that outcome likely doesn't understand, and probably shouldn't have to understand, is the amount of work that goes into it. What they do need to understand is that they're looking for an outcome and a value from that. And if you can communicate it to them in that way, you can do great things like move away from time and materials billing, move towards a value deliverable billing outcome, help them understand the value of it within the context of their own individual business. For example, someone who, I'm going to pick on website design here for a minute, but what is your client who needs this website? What are their goals of it? What are they trying to get out of it? I think we've all encountered websites where there's not even a clear call to action. It's literally just a, hey, we're here, and the world says we're supposed to have a website, so we do. Others, it's their primary go-to-market strategy. And in which case, all right, well, what is each of these worth? What is the website replacing? What is it making it easier to do for that company as opposed to the other alternatives, billboards, site signs, general advertising spend, that kind of stuff? And, speak to what's called a value metric. And the definition of a value metric is different for every company and for every company-client relationship. But, being able to define it so that you can clearly communicate to the person you're working with, like, one of these was great, and here's 10 of them, like that kind of thing. So that was like kind of broad to the point of platitude, but I think anyone in service areas know, like, the unique relationship for you and your client, it's different. Even if you only do websites for this very specific niche, like, each one is unique, and it better be, or you're all just going to be a sea of gray when your customers are trying to research different solutions. So.
Yeah, I think like that. I think the key. I think so much like where my mind just immediately went was like, oh, there has to be, obviously the low hanging fruit things are like, oh, how can we do this? But then, like you said, when you were pointing out the 6 things, it always starts with that product market fit, and back to like empathy and credibility, and like, if we don't understand like what our customers' needs are and what they're trying to do, then we can't really lead with product-led growth in any way, since we're just purely going to the cold emails or cold selling somebody to try to go with us versus another studio or agency, and then you get into that price war basically at that point. But if we're very clear about like, hey, we know your industry, we know you do B2B, your tech, this is what you're trying to do, all this kind of stuff, this is how your website can support it, this is how we can provide that value, then it becomes a lot more clear that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think so. Let me give a more concrete example too of how, like, say Huckfinch, for example, or anybody who's in a similar service might be able to use these principles. Consider that you need to have like a product market fit, so you need to be speaking to the right people. Right above that, you want to hope there's a lot of them. If there's only like 500, like, say your product only helps like CISOs or chief technology officers at the Fortune 500, that's a buying pool of 500. Don't use product-led growth. Go write custom content for just them. But if you've got a democratized pool or decision-making pool, then you're in pretty good shape. And so if folks who might be able to purchase whatever your service is can come to your website, and you solve the most tactical, down-to-earth, individual contributor level problems, right? Like, maybe it's not necessarily lead gathering, but it's like lead processing, whatever that might be. But if you solve something closer to the bottom of the org chart where the majority of humans live, you can speak to them, right? And you can help them solve that problem. The next level is, like an upward adoption model, right? So if the decision maker's at the top and they say, we're going with this vendor, that's a little trickier. It's not impossible to be able to insert yourself as like a voice of like leadership in there, I should say. So like if, say, the person who informs the decision maker is the one who finds your website, then you're really going to be you want to position your messaging around, hey, Steve, here's what you can take with you to your boss to suggest us as the solution, and here's why, and you say it subtly. Not only is your position safe for suggesting us, because we're not going to let you down for all these reasons, and here's proof points of that, but also here are the right words to say, and here are the key taking points, and here's the data that backs it up so you can defend it to your boss, that kind of deal. The top 3 things are a conspicuous value experience. I'm very aware that I'm getting a value here that I didn't get anywhere else from the get-go. After that is self-sign-up, and after that is virality. And virality is just people sharing what you do. And you don't necessarily have to be software as a service to do that. For think about Huck Finch or anyone who's in a similar business line, designed by could be at the bottom of each website. So it's like, oh, shoot, I'm experiencing a lot of value on this website. How do I get this for the people who come to me? And like, okay, you're getting your name out there in those places. Additionally, it could be like, somebody's trying to solve a problem because they're beating their head on a keyboard because WordPress is a nightmare. Well, here's how you solve it in WordPress. Or you should use Webflow. Better yet, don't use just Webflow. Use professionals who know Webflow. Like
This guy. Can we can this?
It's
Somebody, our
recorded.
Producers.
It's recorded.
Ship that out and do an ad right now.
But there's a million sites. Whether it's WordPress or all the copycats where it's like, oh, we're drag and drop, and you're just kind of like a reskinned WordPress sort of deal. But
No, that was really great. And again, we appreciate you being on. We definitely are going to bring you back to dive into this more. But I think we've moved on to the opening a can portion of the show. And in this case, as a token of our appreciation, we want to give you all the time you want to open a can of shameless promotion. So go ahead and just plug anything and everything you want, including the book, obviously.
sure, yeah. Marketing for product-led growth. It looks like this. It's the only book that looks like that. It's the only book with that title on Amazon. That's where I would go to get it. In true PLG fashion, if you have a Kindle, you can read as much of it as you want for free in Kindle Unlimited. You can also just click on the picture of it and you get the first chapter for free. So if you like it, awesome. If you don't, it costs you some time. I'm aware of that cost, and I appreciate you investing in it in me. The only other thing that I'd like to plug out there is if you are in the cybersecurity space, I'll be speaking at the Cyber Marketing Con in December. We'll be down in Austin. And check out discerner.com. It's my agency. We do product market fit for product-led growth. And a lot of what we talked about in more generalities today on this episode, we could do one-on-one together. And I'm more than happy to do that. If you don't want to pay me to talk to you, you can download all the free templates that we use. There's a nice little swipe file you can grab on discerner.com.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, well,
We should drop those links in the show notes just for anybody. We talked about how nobody reads those, but if we point them there and they want this thing, let's make it as easy as possible.
yeah, this is all.
I would say just make sure your logo's huge and buy my book.
Yeah,
Long
I mean,
story
our
short.
logo will take up most of the page, but if you really get down through the bottom, you'll definitely have to click the show more, and then you'll get to it.
Well, given how valuable all this information has been, I'm certain people who are listening to it will click on the show notes in order to go to get Steve's book, check out Discerner, meet up with him at the con that he's going to be at down in Austin. Just because it's in Austin, I almost feel like, Matt, you and I should go as well, just to show up. I don't think I'm going to have to twist your arm about that. But with that, that is it, everyone. Another banger drop today with the likes of turtlenecks and blazers. Thanks, Steve, again, for sharing your insights, your expertise, and encouraging listeners to check out your book, Marketing for Product-Led Growth, Become a Company Leader Through Credibility and Empathy. And we just really appreciate you taking the time to just diving deeper into the subject matter.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, and before we round out this episode, just a big thank you to everyone who's listening and tuning into Flow State each week. Your support means the world to us. We're making this weird little show about stuff that's hopefully helpful. So anybody following along or anybody you think that would find this either funny or interesting or entertaining or somewhere between, please subscribe to our channel so you can listen each week more easily, and that helps out the channel and the show and helps us chase that elusive sponsor that we're after.
Yeah,
that's our big goal. So we'll be back with more premium content on design and all sorts of other things. So make sure you subscribe, like right now,
Literally
right now, so you don't miss our drops.
Should we drop the sponsor reel right now?
I don't have it handy. I think they're just working on polishing it up, the sponsor. I think so, yeah.
Little dead air in this case. Well, that's all, everybody. Thank you, and that's it. Another banger. Fade to black.